Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thanks to Open-Xchange for having me here today. I definitely appreciate being here. We had a really fun and informative talk this morning about trust and privacy. And we focused our attention on the actions of Facebook, Google, Twitter, a lot of the social media things that we deal with every day. It's important to note that those are big players, very important players in the internet. But we as insiders know that the internet is a diverse ecosystem. And that those big players are actually the exception, that most people in the internet space, in the internet infrastructure space, most organizations are small to medium businesses. Most organizations are like my company. My company is a company called Servant. I'm a web hosting company. And by the statistics that I've seen, there are about 35,000 companies like mine doing software as a service, platform as a service, cloud infrastructure provider work, registry, registrar work, things like that within our industry. We understand that privacy and trust issues are very important to us, too. And we're going to talk today a little bit about how to deal with maintaining your customers' trust in the wake of some of the same things that we were talking about this morning, but focused on the needs of our particular community. And I'm going to go ahead and start that conversation by talking about something called the fappening. You may have heard something about this in the news just a couple of weeks ago. This is an event that, if you're unfamiliar, happened on one of these two popular forum websites, 4chan and Reddit, when hackers released series of pictures in relative states of undress of a series of actresses and of models. These are pictures that had been hacked and stolen from their phones, from their cloud accounts, from various different places. They were private messages between them and the individual that they intended, and they were taken by hackers. And they were given to the world on these public forums. And then the news media picked up on it and made it front page news. And in many cases actually said, oh, wow, here are links to the pictures. It's astounding. And what that did was it reignited a conversation that we have been having fairly heavily over the course of the past year, little over a year, about whether there can be privacy on the internet, about the importance of it, whether you can put something on the internet and have it be private. It's a little over a year because it was started by the Snowden revelations, and I'd like to get back into that in a moment. What's happened over the course of this past year is that trust has completely eroded between us and our customers about the ability of there to be privacy on the cloud, about their belief that you can have privacy on the cloud, which is a problem when we don't have trust between us and our customers, and we are providing online services. It negatively affects our business in pretty important ways. So what I'd like to do is start by going back to the beginning of the Snowden revelations and start by talking about what we're not going to be talking about, which is Snowden and the revelations. I don't like the term Snowden revelations, even though it's probably the phrase that has been most used in the news media over the course of the past year. I don't like it for two reasons. First of all, by focusing attention on Snowden himself, you focus attention on somebody, and the question becomes, was what he did right? What's going to happen to him next? Is he going to get clemency? Is he ever going to be able to return to the US? And at this point, those are almost entertainment issues. They don't have global ramifications, whereas the actual actions of the NSA and what happens next, they do have global ramifications. And by focusing your attention on Snowden and by keeping him as part of the public dialogue, we're actually taking our eye off the ball. I also don't like the word revelations, because it's almost as if the act of knowing is the problem. As if, oh, well, now that we know, we've got an issue. When it's actually the actions of the NSA and of governments in taking these steps to invade our privacy that we need to be focused on. So I reject the term Snowden revelations. I'd like to replace it with the actions of the NSA or the actions of government. So we won't be talking about Snowden today, but I'd like to take a look at what we have learned over the course of the past year. We've learned the vast scope of prison-related data gathering. We've learned the tremendously disturbing lack of oversight of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISC. The tremendous scope of phone call surveillance, the shockingly massive collection of metadata, and that specific targeting of citizens has happened. Actually, the most scary thing that we've learned is that there hasn't been a public appetite for charging up to Capitol Hill with pitchforks saying, this is wrong, this is a problem. The scariest thing that we have learned is that we're not as outraged as I thought that we would be. But when you think about it, it's not all that surprising. This is a pretty heavy learning curve. The commercial internet's been around for, what, about 20 years? It seems like a blink of an eye that I was figuring out how to set up a modem. I mean, I'm a little older than some of the people in the room. But we're talking about things that involve words like metadata. It's good that the public is now starting to learn what metadata encompasses, which is a lot, which is important. It is okay that this process is taking a while to catch on with the public about the importance of privacy. We've realized that government surveillance encompasses metadata, email, phone calls, and all digital correspondence, and we're just starting to realize the implications of that. Around the same time that the fappening happened, another leak came out about a program called IC-Reach. IC-Reach is a government sharing program. So we're talking about this being far bigger than the NSA. We always knew that there was sharing, but now we have a much more of an understanding of what we mean by sharing. If another agency needs information, they've got this program. It ultimately, they call it up there in the corner, a Google-like search, where other organizations can go, other government organizations can go and search for the data that they need. So you're talking about way more people than organizations than the NSA that have access to these vast collections of data. And we know that there are similar programs going on with other governments. We also know that there's information sharing between the NSA and Interpol and other organizations. So this is not just a US-based problem. This is a problem that is widespread through a number of different countries. People are realizing that they can be tracked anywhere in the world. They're realizing that this stuff can happen to them. And the more things happen, like the pictures of the women a couple of weeks ago, the more they're going to understand that. The more they're going to understand when they see tools like this up for sale, iPhone Password Breaker, which is the type of software that was used to take those women's photographs, which was theoretically built to enter into the hands of governments so that they can use them for government surveillance. But you never know, and you never know what the intentions of those governments are. This is another intelligence surveillance software company that puts out a product in which they can triangulate cell phone towers and they can find out where you are anywhere in the world. And this is something that they're selling to governments across the world. And potentially, it's falling into the hands of others as well. So we know that this is theoretically pretty scary stuff, but I want to talk a little bit about why I feel, personally, surveillance is wrong. I come from the United States, and this was a country that was founded on a very subversive idea, an idea that we should rise up against England, and we should become our own independent country. Thomas Paine put out a book called Common Sense, and in it were these very subversive ideas that the people in power definitely didn't want to get out there into the world. We talk about the internet being a potentially disruptive tool to make the world a better place, and we need to realize that through history, and through the history of my country, change has only ever really come through the abolition of slavery and votes for women and the civil rights struggle, when the oppressed challenge the oppressors. The internet can be a great motivating tool for that, and has been already, but the more the internet is a tool for the surveillance state, the more we see suppression of thought. And we see it in really two ways. The first is we fear actual suppression of ideas. We think that we're going to say something, we're going to have it physically used against us. I don't know the extent to which that has actually happened, using the tools that are out there. But the McCarthy era, which is the Red Scare era in America, where Senator Joe McCarthy and a whole bunch of his compatriots accused a number of individuals of being communists and ruined their lives and made it so that they could not work, that they could not hold a job. This happened in our recent history, and the kinds of things that the mass collection of data has allowed has pretty much made it so that I'll bet anybody in this room, myself included, could be destroyed in some way, shape, or form with something that's out there. So the tools that exist now could make a future Red Scare far, far worse. But what I'm way more concerned about than the actual suppression of ideas is something called the chilling effect of knowing that you are being surveilled. It's the idea that you had that could advance things forward. It's the innovation that you want to build that you're a little bit nervous that it could ruffle some feathers, that some people in power might not like what you have to say. And so you decide not to put that idea out there into the world. You decide to let the status quo advance. And in doing so, you do a disservice to how good the world can be and how good a tool the internet can be. Honestly, that's the most terrifying aspect of this. And I think that we all do it every day. I think that we're all careful about what we say, especially in the past year. Maybe I'm not going to put that over text. But it's all being done theoretically to make us safer as a society. So we should question that. We should take a look and say, oh, are we safer? Well, I don't know that hacking Angela Merkel's phone made us safer. It seems to me to be something that is fairly diplomatically unwise. And I don't know that now that we understand that government organizations have put backdoors into software and hardware devices on the internet in order to serve the mass collection of data. And in doing so, have potentially opened up the door not only to the mass collection of their own data, but the enablement of hackers. They're not making the internet a safer place. And the rule of law has been harmed, and that doesn't make the world a safer place. I'm going to talk about the U.S. one more time. In the U.S. Constitution, there's something called the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is a protection against the illegal search and seizure. And it has been held up as sort of the gold standard of the rule of law over the last 237 years since it was created. Though people have written documents trying to justify these NSA programs constitutionally, nobody can tell me that what the NSA has been doing conforms with the spirit of the Fourth Amendment. And with a weaker constitution, with a weaker rule of law, we have less credibility in the world. It does not make us safer. But we've been telling that to legislators since we found out what was going on. And they say, yeah, but you know what? If it helps stop terrorism, what are we going to do? So we started shifting our arguments to economic arguments because we're seeing true economic harm happening as a result of what's been going on. ITIF, the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, did a study last year that said that they thought that the U.S. cloud computing industry could lose $35 billion by 2016 as a result of the revelations of NSA spying. And then Forrester Research said, well, wait a second, you did it wrong. Because you just took a look at direct contracts that you can put your finger on that you think might be lost. But that's not really how the cloud works. And plus, you have to realize that it's not just the business that they themselves are getting, but all of the commerce that they are enabling on top of that. And when you take a look at how the entire ecosystem works, you're seeing it's going to be more like 180 billion. Neelie Kroes, European Commissioner for Digital Affairs, says that the follow-up from Snowden's leaks will have multi-billion euro consequences for U.S. businesses. But as I said before, this isn't just a U.S. issue. This is something that, as time goes on, we're finding more and more about how many countries are involved, about how trust is eroded everywhere. And so those curbing of the growth of the cloud issues are going to be seen across our spectrum, everywhere in this industry, not just in the US. But let me talk for a second about US-based companies, because we have been losing contracts. Some of them are demonstrable. Boeing lost a $1 billion contract with Brazil. And Brazil specifically cited that they didn't want to do business with US companies because of the actions of the NSA. Verizon just 2 months ago lost a major contract with the German government, and the same things were cited. And those things make the news, but honestly, they're the exception, because what's really happening is the small to medium businesses that make up the cloud are losing business every day. And the cloud is an environment in which you don't have long-term contracts. If you're lucky, you have a month-to-month contract. Most of it is hourly. And people can move their business with 2 clicks of a mouse without ever telling you why they're moving that business. And so you have to take a look at things it's hard to tell when you're losing that business. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. I run a web hosting company called Servant. I took a look the other day and found out that we have clients in 117 different countries, which is pretty cool. We're very popular all around the world. It's been more. But traditionally, 60% of our signups for new business have come from international sources. And since the NSA leaks, that number has dropped to 30%. 30% of our new business inquiries come from international sources. So it's been cut in half. Now, Servant, I think of us as a very innovative company. We have stepped up to the challenge of that. We have done new and innovative things to drive more leads in the door, to find new ways to grow past this problem. And we've used our resources in our 19 years in the business to fight through this problem. And we are a company that is succeeding in spite of this, but it's a shame that the actions of our government are making us work so hard against the feelings of mistrust that international customers and all customers are having about cloud environments like ours. And our story is not unique. In fact, our story is better than most because a lot of these companies aren't finding ways to recoup that business in other areas. And they're just seeing it walk away. So when we ask ourselves, are we safer? My answer is a bad economy doesn't make us safer. Fewer jobs doesn't make us safer, and a loss of economic opportunity doesn't make us safer. And so when we ask legislators why they are doing this, and they say, trust us, we're fighting terrorism, it's okay, I say, the era of just trust us is long gone. The surveillance state is demonstrably weakening encryption standards and empowering hackers. It's losing the faith of cloud adopters. It's curbing the growth of the cloud, undermining the rule of law worldwide, suppressing and shaming innovation, harming global economic interests in its most successful economic sector, and starting the US and other governments on a path of escalated costs and spiraling taxpayer burden. Now, I'm going to say that last one again. Starting the US and other governments on a path of escalated costs and spiraling taxpayer burden. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, our customers don't trust us. We need to do something about it. So we need to take action. The cloud providers, the people that work in this space, the people in this room need to do something about it. They have the surveillance state. We need to meet it and match it with the encryption economy. And we need to bring the skills of our industry to bear to regain the trust of our industry if we can't do it legislatively. So what can we do? Well, like I said, we need to regain the trust of our customers, never trade on the trust of our customers. We need to be transparent with what law enforcement's requesting. I'm going to get to that in a second. Upholding the rule of law is important, and active participants in the encryption economy need to be involved. One active participant that I want to talk about today, especially because we're here, is the open source community. The open source community is interesting to me because I think that it can be used as a force of good in regaining the trust of the global community. Because when we took a look before at the problems with those backdoors in the internet, you take a look at a solution like Open-Xchange, a fantastic solution. And Not that they would ever be the type of company to do that, but if they decided to agree to put a backdoor into one of their systems, you would see it. And that's good. When you have a closed system, you don't know what's going on underneath the hood. It's like a car with the hood welded shut. When you have an open system and you see the moving parts, you know what's happening with your data within. And so when it comes to regaining the trust of our customers, may the source be with you. We'll talk about transparency for a second. The Electronic Frontier Foundation has a list of the companies on the internet that have your back. The ones that require a warrant for content, who tell users about government data requests, who publish transparency reports, who publish law enforcement guidelines, fight for users' privacy rights in courts, and fight for users' privacy rights in Congress. That middle one is called transparency reports. All that is about when government does request data, tell your customers about it. Let them know what levels they're asking for data about. Inform them about what's going on, and they'll trust you and they'll believe in you as you deal with them on that level. The next thing is the rule of law. Bad things happen on the internet, and law enforcement does need access to some data. Respecting the rule of law is important. I do that in my company by requiring a warrant for content. And it needs to be a right warrant, it needs to be a just warrant. And if it's not, I'll push back on it. And that warrant is something that I will share with my customer unless expressly told that I can't. And if I'm expressly told that I can't, I require them, law enforcement agency, to cite the specific statute that prevents me from sharing that information with my customer. Because it should be my customer's right to know what's being asked of them, and it should be in their rights to be able to challenge that request when need be. We have found that since we implemented those standards, 2/3 of the requests that come into our facility, when they are questioned, when they said this isn't accurate, come back and do it again, when we say we are going to share this with our customers, 2/3 of them never see the light of day. That doesn't mean we don't want to be very helpful and work with law enforcement to make sure that they get the data that they need if it is proper and signed off by a judge, and there is due process of law and real reason behind the collection of data. But we have no requirement to assist in the mass collection of surveilled data. And that brings me to the last point, which is we need to focus our attention on encryption. We need to find new ways to make it more difficult and more expensive for governments to do what they're doing with the mass bulk collection of data. So encrypt your data. Find ways to help your customers encrypt their data. Find ways to restore the faith that our customers have in us, that there can be privacy on the internet, while we fight for real surveillance reform. But at the end of the day, what I want to get across to everybody is that the internet can be a place where privacy is real. This is not okay. It's okay to believe that you can use this incredible tool in the ways that it was designed and still expect some level of privacy. If we go back to the fappening that I talked about at the beginning, I really like this tweet. I've never heard anyone respond to financial hacking by saying, just don't use online banking. That's what you get for using credit cards. But what was happening a lot in the dialogue that we were having about that specific issue is that there was a lot of shaming of the people that were victims. And it struck me as really wrong. Like the kind of thing that you see when rapists blame the victim. Look what she was wearing, she had it coming. And it's not okay. So while we fight for real surveillance reform, because it's good for the economy, it's good for the rule of law, and it's good for the safety of those who live under the law, and it's good for the tech industry. We need to understand that we need to build the tools necessary to keep things private no matter what. Communications with your lawyers should be private. Communications with your doctor should be private. Communications with your bank should be private. But so should anything else you want or need private. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's really important to the future of the internet and the future of the advancement of the human race. So I truly believe that in order to meet the needs of our customers, in order to push this industry forward and help the internet grow up, we need to be focusing our attention on encryption and on building back up the trust in the internet as a private tool. I think it's our moral imperative to do so. The group that I'm up here representing is called the Internet Infrastructure Coalition. Right now, we're about 70 organizations. We are trying to build a collective voice for the people that build the nuts and bolts of the internet to work on this and other really important issues that help grow and expand our industry and our ability to serve our users. It is a predominantly small to medium business-driven industry, and we are looking for small to medium businesses to join our voices. Think of it as a collection of the internet good guys and gals fighting for what's right on the internet. If you're interested in learning more about it, contact me or Hillary over here, who's our membership director. And thanks for your time today.